right, everyone. Welcome back to episode 4 of Bros Who Close.
That's fist bump.
A podcast where fist bump is our iconic sort of, what do we call it?
Signature move.
Signature move.
There's an ending move and beginning move.
That's right. Bros Who Close, where we talk about all things sales, closing deals, real estate to help entrepreneurs succeed. This is our 4th episode, and today we're going to talk about busting down real estate myths. I'm super excited for this one.
Same here. We were. It's so funny that in this day of this age of technology, it's so much easier to do these. Sid and I were sitting here, and we were like, "Hey, man, let's just try to brainstorm 20 myths, or we're gonna talk about 6 or 7 myths, I think, today." And ChatGPT, guys.
ChatGPT to the rescue. By the way, if you have an iPhone, especially the new ones, there's an action button on the side. And I don't know if you guys know this. I found this hack from Instagram. You can actually make this into the action button change it into ChatGPT, the app. So it'll turn Siri into ChatGPT. So I literally I hold down the action button and I talk to it like I'm talking to Siri, but I'm talking to ChatGPT. And then it talks back, and then you're just going back and forth, back and forth.
That's so cool. I feel that, again, without ChatGPT, it's not there to replace us yet, I should say.
Yeah.
However, what it's definitely doing is assisting us.
It's enhancing what we're doing already. Like our
100%.
admin uses ChatGPT
every day
just to make her life easier, and we encourage her to use AI as much as possible because now instead of, let's just say 2 admins, or instead of her workload being crazy, besides all the automations and stuff, and we'll talk about this on a future episode about systems, but yeah, it just makes your life so much easier.
It makes our life easier. Like, we're sitting here, instead of trying to spend 45 minutes trying to brainstorm 6 ideas, we just had ChatGPT give us 20 or so, and we picked the best 7 that truly resonated with us. So I know every single episode we talk about how great ChatGPT is. I think Sid and I, we both have the pro version of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Again, if you guys are not using ChatGPT in your life, start right now.
I mean, I feel like most people are using it or they know of it, but the pro version is just on another level. And by the way, you don't even need the pro version. You can just go off the free one.
Yeah.
The free one is amazing. The pro one is if you just want that extra little, enhancement, it's great.
100%. And it just, again, it's just started to assist you with the time. So let's get started. I think we're going to do this a little different this time around. We're going to go
questions back and forth.
Yeah, just questions back and forth. We'll see how much time we have, but we'll keep going until we hit our marker on the timer.
So question number 1 is, or myth number 1, I should say, is you need a lot of money to get into real estate sales.
Yo, this is so far from the truth. It's not even funny.
Yeah.
And I think, if you just look at the city of Toronto or GTA in general, I think there was, at the peak of the market, there was some 85,000 agents. Mm-hmm. The barrier to entry in real estate is so low. It's not even funny. I think you got to go. I think now the courses are offered through Humber College. Mm-hmm. And, there are agents out there. And again, there are agents out there that probably don't even know a word of English.
Yeah.
And they have their real estate license. So, again, I think it's just one of those things that's very far from the truth. The barriers to entry in becoming an agent is extremely low. And that's why you have, so many agents in the city. However, there are very few agents and very few teams that are actually doing business. I think the last stat we heard is some 90 or 95% of the agents do. Sorry, I should say the top 1% of the agents do something like 80% of the deals out there.
Yeah.
And it's so true. If you just look at even our office in general, I think there's a very few agents within our office. There's probably a handful who are doing majority of the deals.
Yeah.
And I think that goes with but I think that's true with a lot of industries, real estate specifically, in general. And I think worldwide, real estate, to get into real estate sales, the barriers of entry is very low. Mm-hmm. However, it just takes a lot of grit, it takes a lot of action to be able to succeed within this business.
Yeah.
Because it's a very relationship-based, trusting business out there.
Yeah, you don't necessarily need a lot of money to, quote-unquote, get your license and get into the industry. But yes, majority of agents aren't making any money. They're probably losing money by just holding on to the real estate license every month. My TREP fees email, the due just came. It's like $2,000, and I'm like, all right, whatever. It's it's the price you have to pay to hold your license. On top of that, there's the RICO fees, there's insurance, there's all these other brokerage fees you're probably paying. So there's a lot of fees. It's not you don't need a ton of money. However, with anything else, especially in real estate, the sales cycle is long.
Very long.
Right? So unless you're doing leases where you're turning things around quick and you're getting quick deals, in order for you to get a buy-sell deal, especially when you're first starting out, can take as much as 6 months.
Yeah,
from
if
the
not
time-
longer.
If not longer, if you're chasing a lead, if you're doing lead generation, or even if you're after your own sphere, not everyone, people think they're going to get their license and there's just deals waiting for them to happen, and that's just not the case.
Yeah, this is not the case. And, again, looking back at the city of Toronto, looking at not city of Toronto, GTA in general, TREB, I think majority of the agents are doing 0 and 1 deal. But you know what? It also brings up to a very important point where if you're doing 0 to 1 deal a year,
Yeah.
what kind of service, what kind of education, what kind of expertise do you really bring to the table to be able to assist your clients? During the pandemic, I think a lot of the agents took their license because they're like, well, I'm going to go and get my license because I want to buy my own, or I want to do my own transaction. I'm going to buy my own house.
Yeah.
And, but now again, like post-pandemic, even looking within our office, a lot of people have just quit the industry.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is also the media and people's perception of real estate agents. They seem to think, yeah, real estate agents, they're making so much money, there's all these deals happening. But yeah, going back to what you said, there's only the top 1 to maybe 2% who are doing majority of the deals.
Yeah.
And the reason they're doing majority of the deals is because their service is that good. I mean, we're prime examples of that. We're a top 1% team. And the reason why we're doing a lot of business is because we're getting a lot of repeat referrals and we're able to extend to that service.
Absolutely. And, going back again, when I first started as an agent, my service level, within my client base has increased tremendously. I was talking to IR admin the other day, and, actually it was yesterday. I was driving and I was talking to her about one of the deals that I'm in the middle of. And I just, gave her the instructions of what I needed done and then moved on. And as soon as I hung up with her, I was like, you know what, man? Like, I would not be able to provide this high level of service to my database or to my clientele had it not been for a team that I work with. So it's very, as I said, like my service level was high. However, it just got to a different level when we started getting help and we started expanding the team.
Yeah, 100%.
So we'll go to the next question.
Yeah, what's next?
The next question is, do you have to be an extrovert to succeed in sales?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I like to think of myself as an introverted extrovert. Okay, so I'm not completely an extrovert and I'm not completely an introvert. I lie somewhere in the middle. However, I always use this one girl as an perfect example. I used to work in this job years ago for Yellow Pages, the media company. I don't know if they're still around, but they're the ones
I
who
still get charged $11.99 a month.
That's a whole other story where I sold Saurabh a service when I was working there, but that's for another day.
We'll tell this quick story.
Yeah, we'll tell a quick story. So I got this job at Yellow Pages where I started working as a sales rep for new business development. And my job was to cold call people and sell them the monthly subscriptions for ad space. And I would get like a pretty good spiff and like commission off of that, right? And so one of our lowest tier offers was like $10 a month. That gets you on the, in this case, a real estate page of Yellow Pages. And I remember calling Saurabh and be like, yo, buy this and I'll get you on the first page of Google. And he's like, really? How are you going to get me on the first page of Google?
Fucking guy.
The whole thing was when you type in real estate agent Etobicoke, on the first page of Google was Yellow Pages. And when you go on to Yellow Pages, that page had, your listing on there or your ad on there. So I sold it to him. And I think it's been, 7 years?
7 years. I still haven't canceled that freaking thing.
And that $10 a month got me like $100 in commission, which is great at the time.
Which is great. But you know what? It also brings us to one good point we talked about in this previous episode is, knowing your sphere.
Yeah, knowing your sphere.
He called me. Yeah. I was his brother. The trust factor was already established. All he had to do, it was literally the quickest pitch. And I'm a very easy guy to sell to. Yeah. I think 30 seconds later, I'm like, you know what? I don't have fucking time for this. Take my credit card number down.
Yeah, and I think I got a couple of referrals from him too from the same call. Who I called and I said, hey, by the way, Saurabh asked me to give you a call. Yeah. And I just kind of extended from there. But anyway, the point of the story, or to go back to this is, I remember I worked with this one girl who worked there, and she was the most quietest, most submissive sort of person. She wasn't very talkative. She wasn't very extroverted at all. She was the complete opposite. And I wish I could remember her name. Anyway, this girl, she was an absolute machine when it came to sales. She was the top performing sales rep in that entire company when I started there.
That's crazy.
And she was making upwards of $300,000 selling ads to blue collar workers. And the reason she was so good is because of her ability to ask questions, her ability to listen, and her ability to qualify, and her ability to close. So people have this idea that, salespeople need to have this huge extroverted, larger than life personality where you have to persuade and talk yourself into the sale, and that couldn't be further from the truth.
So true.
The reality of sales is the best salespeople out there are people who actually take the time to listen more than they talk. They're talking for 20% of the time, but they're listening for 80% of the time, and not just listening, but actively listening.
Yeah.
And if you can solve for that ability, for your ability to listen, and then provide feedback based on the information that you're getting, do a needs analysis by asking the right questions and providing the right solution, that's what makes a great salesperson, whether you're introverted or extroverted. I've actually seen extroverted salespeople's personality backfire on them in sales because they talk themselves out of a sale.
And I was like that, I like to think I'm a very extroverted person. I'm complete opposite, and I had to learn it the hard way of truly be able, and I still have problems with this, like truly actively listening. So to your point, yes, introverted people, extroverted people, it doesn't matter as long as you have that ability to persuade people, actively listen, do the needs analysis. I think you will kill it in any industry.
There's definitely a lot of benefits to being extroverted because you bring a certain personality and that people are drawn towards.
Yes.
But that's not enough.
That's not enough.
Right? What really takes you to the other side is when you have the ability to ask the right questions and solve for a problem. Right? People, we live in a value exchange industry right now or environment right now. If you can provide enough value, regardless of your personality type, that you can solve somebody's problems, that'll enhance their life, it doesn't matter what your personality type
Absolutely right. And again, to your point earlier, or right now, it's like value-based information, society and we give up so much information for free. Like people say, oh, Saurabh, you guys make so much money in sales. True. Yes, we do make a lot of money. But what people don't see is the amount of time I spend with clients, other agents, just giving them information for free. And that's, to me, is service.
100%.
So, the more you're servicing people out there, again, it doesn't matter, you're introverted, extroverted, as long as you continue to provide value to your client base, I think you're going to excel in this business.
Absolutely. All right, the next one's actually one of my favorite ones, which a lot of people seem to bring up. And that is all agents are the same.
You know what? This is too funny. And I'll kind of just start with, a few examples. So I think last year and this year, especially this year, we have taken so many expired listings. It's not even funny. And, if you truly look at like, hey, what set us apart from some of the other agents, and I'm not saying that we were the best ones for the job, whatever. I mean, again, I believe that we truly are the best ones for the job, within our industry. But I think one of the reasons that we took over some of these listings was, again, like they just did not get the right advice from agents. And there are a lot of agents out there who just say that, we call them, order takers, or you would say, yep, go and here's, 0.5 or 1% commission. And this is what I need you to do. And this is how you're going to do it. And this is how you're going to execute. And so the client's really driving the conversation.
Right.
Where this is the biggest piece of asset you're ever going to transact in for most people. And you truly should be looking to a professional to give you that advice. As soon as the client starts driving conversations regarding how to make a sale, I think that's you're setting yourself up for failure, right? And it goes to show that these agents that we at least took the listings from were not very experienced. Were doing this part-time. Did not have the market knowledge or expertise, did not really have a strategy in place to be able to go and make their sales. I remember the one we got last year. I think it was a YouTube lead that you had gotten. The one sale that we had on Dundas Street.
Yes. So this particular client, actually, I'm glad you brought this up. I remember we overtook this listing from this other agent while it was still live. And, legally, we can't advise anybody to cancel their agreements, but this particular client insisted that he cancel his agreement with the agent, which he did. And in that particular instance, very important to know what you're talking about here is she was a complete order taker, the agent who was representing him. Why? Because she took photos, put it on the MLS, and then hoped for the best, right? However, this is where
And she was a part-time agent, by the way.
And she was a part-time agent. Yes, good point. But I think the point that we're trying to drive home is that what do we do differently? Like, what do we magically do differently is you're having these tough conversations with clients, right? And the first thing we asked this client was, hey, what did she ask you to do? Like, what advice did she give you? She said, well, let's take photos and let's put it on the MLS. And our advice right away was, look, if we want to make this presentable and if we want to sell this property, these are the things we're going to have to do. That means we're going to have to rip out the flooring and replace it. We're going to have to enhance the kitchen with minimal renovations. And that was not an easy conversation with the client because that required the client to take it off the market for some time, spend money, but it was the right advice.
It was the right advice,
And it was the right advice because it got the job done. And then, of course, our ability to market it, stage it, and then present it to people, is another whole different game that we did afterwards. But it all starts with giving the right advice and doing what's best for the client.
Absolutely, right. And then, it also comes down to, and we'll talk about, I think it was one of the questions down there, but I'll give the story, now, is once we took that listing, it was a hard listing to sell.
Yeah,
It's still like we were getting showings, sure, but nobody was really willing to pull the trigger. I remember like our strategy going in would be, hey, we're going to list it at a lower price. We're not going to take any offers on it. Sorry, we're going to list it at a low price without an offer date on it. And we're just going to keep it there, right? And every single listing that we get, it's not just, we don't just hope and pray that it's going to sit on MLS and sell. We really market it within our database. And I remember talking to this one agent that I know. He had come to another, one of our listings on Park Lawn. And he was talking about, this is too small for them, whatever have you. I was like, hey man, like you got to show this listing. I've got this amazing listing. And it was just outside of Lakeshore Park. It was probably an 8-minute drive or whatever have you. And he's like, no, it doesn't work in area. I truly persuaded the agent to go and show them the listing. And it was an agent from our network. I've known this agent for years and years and years. And of course, he went and showed the listing. It was a beautiful listing to showcase. And right away, we got an offer on it.
100%.
So crazy.
So a good agent is somebody that's not just, they know what they're doing and they have the expertise, but they're also very proactive.
And connected.
Connected, have a great network, and know how to actually drive the sale forward. And that reminds me of, I remember we had this listing at Park Lawn, and we'd put it up. And right before that, it was a tough market, and right before that, a similar unit had sold. And this is where you can really differentiate one agent from another and know that not all agents are the same. I called that agent who'd sold the unit there on the lower floor, and I said, hey, congratulations on your sale, by the way. You did fantastic. I'm so happy for you. Hey, by the way, would you mind sharing the business cards of all the agents that showed the property? And sure enough, this agent appreciated the fact that I was reaching out to her, and then forwarded me a list of all the agents that had showed. And then I called those agents, and I remember doing a deal with one of the agents who had showed and who was not able to successfully secure that property. And this just, again, goes to show that being proactive and thinking outside the box and doing things with that extra effort can really make the difference from a good agent to an absolutely great agent.
Yeah, it's so true. Very true.
All right.
Okay, so moving on to the next question is, this is my favorite question for sure. Number 4, cold calling is dead.
Ooh, cold calling is definitely not dead. So cold calling, I mean, we got our start in cold calling.
Come on, man.
And cold calling is just, look, let's be honest. Nobody likes to cold call.
No.
Nobody likes cold calling, which is why it is the best, most untapped source of lead generation out there to this day. I will guarantee any agent, I'll put the money on this. If you can sit here and make 50 contacts, and if you don't get a listing, I will personally pay you money. And that's only because most people are not doing it. And if you just shut down your door, open up your phone, put it on silent, and just start dialing and making calls, you will get a listing.
Absolutely. And it goes for every industry out there, by the way.
Every
not
industry.
Just real estate. Cold calling, it's a skill.
Yeah.
It's a very hard thing to do. It's not easy. You need extremely thick skin. When I say thick skin, you need to be okay with rejection.
Right.
And if you still want to get your reps in to be able to get rejections, cold calling is probably the best place to start.
100%.
The rejection rate is so high.
Yeah.
that by the time, you do this for 6 months.
It's a humbling experience.
It's a very humbling
It's
experience.
a character building exercise.
Yes.
I encourage everybody, even if you're not in sales, just pick up the phone and cold call if you just want to get out of your comfort zone.
It's so true. I think it's the hard. I remember my first cold call. It was in the condo. We talked about it in the previous episode. One of the, and my heart, it was like high. And I don't even know what words I uttered from my mouth. I think it was all bullshit. The person on the other end is like, who the fuck is this calling me? Like, what are you saying, buddy? To getting my first listing. And I remember, getting one of my first listings in Etobicoke. We'd already gotten some success in Milton when we were cold calling there. And we said, like, you know what? Like, then Sid and I started getting lazy. And we were like, you know what? Let's just start cold calling within Etobicoke because, that's where our office was. And the very first day, this was on Elma Street.
Very well.
And, we cold called. You got this lady said yes. I was shocked out of my mind. And I think we went to her house within the hour.
By the way, hold on. Let me just go back a second. That same call, we'd spent the entire day hitting 49, 50 contacts. We'd hit our contacts. And then I think Saurabh was like, fuck, man, this is kind of frustrating. We didn't get a single fucking appointment, right? And he's like, let me just call one more. And then Saurabh picks up the phone. This is a true story. He calls one number. This happened to be Elma. The lady picked up. And sure enough, she's like, yes, I'm looking to sell. So the power of persistence is absolutely key. That was the last call before he gave up. He's like, I'm done. And then he made one more call and we got the listing. That just shows you that there's always...
Oh, but there's a story behind the listing too. Like, that was so funny, man.
Oh, my God. We should talk about the story. So we ended up going to her house. Beautiful, amazing lady. She'd lived in that property for 30 years. It's a bungalow, right? She had an addition in the back too. Great property. And then, we did our value pitch and value.
Her husband had passed away, so she was a single lady.
She was single. She was a lovely lady. And remember, we're going through the whole value proposition. And this is, by the way, we're still brand new to listings at the time.
Very new.
We didn't even have a listing presentation.
No.
So we were just like sitting there talking about how
I think we had a shitty one.
We had a really shitty listing.
And I remember her opening it, and she was looking for spelling errors.
She was looking for spelling errors because she was a teacher, and she was like, the spelling errors is where I'm going to have to really make or break this.
Like,
anyway,
fuck.
we didn't end up closing this, right? We didn't end up getting the signature, and then Saurabh and I...
Because she kept giving us,
yes. So yes, I remember now.
Objections.
Her objection was her cousin was an agent who she had promised she was going to speak to.
Yeah.
And she said, I have to as an obligation, speak to my cousin in order to do this. I still want to do it with you guys. And, a lot of times people say that just to kind of get you out the door. But I just have to talk to her and let her know. And I remember...
So she sold us on
why she's not signing at the time.
Yes.
And then
we didn't really ask for the sale either. I mean, we weren't very persuasive.
We weren't very, persuasive at the time or trying to get the signature. But then I remember we left, got in the car and driving home.
And we're both quiet.
And we're both super quiet. And it was there was
fuck.
tension in the air. And then I looked over to Saurabh. I'm like, yo, something doesn't feel right. We got to fucking go back. And so sure enough, Saurabh's like, yeah, let's fucking go back. This guy turned the car around when we were almost home. We drove back to her house. And then we
knocked on the door.
We knocked on the door and we came up with the story. If you're watching, Joanne, she actually caught on to this, but this is a true story. Here's what happened. We knock on the door and she goes, oh, you guys are back. We go, yeah, Joanna, we were back. We actually left our pen in your house. And then I'm like, do you mind if we come in and get this pen? And she was like, okay, sure, come on in.
And I was a mess.
And then Saurabh was quiet. He did not want to talk or anything. He was just not sure what direction we're going to go. So I go in and I'm like, stupidly looking for the pen. There is no pen. Okay, the pen
was in my pocket.
The pen was in Saurabh's pocket. And so we're looking around, and then casually I mentioned, so Joanna, on the way home, we talked to our stager and our photographer. We're able to tentatively book him for this Thursday.
Yeah.
However, we are going to need a commitment from you. And then in this time, if you want to talk to your cousin or whatever, feel free to do that. And then we can pretty much make changes from there.
Yeah, I think one of the things we said at that point is like, listen, if it doesn't feel right to you, we'll rip up the paperwork.
Yeah.
Which, going back now, which is the wrong strategy to say like, oh, we'll rip up the paperwork. I think she would have signed with us anyway.
Yeah.
She was 90% there. I think the only reason she wasn't sure is because we were strangers, right? Like we just were total strangers.
We were total strangers, and yes, in hindsight, we should not have positioned it that way. That hey, listen, worst case, you can cancel it. Approach you should never take.
Yeah.
But it was a funny story because we really wanted to make sure we closed that deal. And by the way, there's a very good ending to this, and some of you might be thinking, oh, these guys are sleazy salespeople trying to get a signature. But the moral of the story is that not only were we able to get her the best price,
Yes, 100%.
beyond her expectations, we were able to do it off market before we even put it up. And she was in her 70s.
Yep.
And so, instead of having, people come through her door and, sitting on the market for weeks, we sold it within a few days.
We sold it within a few days. We sold it to another builder. The building's not torn down, and it's got rebuilds. But again, going back to the service that we talked about earlier, her biggest pain point was she's been living in this house for 30 years. Her husband had passed away. She needed help. We put in timelines. We put in deadlines, and I told her, as part of our service, Joanne, we will, declutter everything for you. Let us hire, and we will pay for it. Like, we offered to pay for literally everything within our listing. Yeah. She said, no, I'll do it myself. A week later, it seemed like nothing had happened. Yeah. And then right away, we got our people through. Like, Joanne, let us just take over. She's like, you know what? You guys are right. Just take over. Yeah. And the house was ready within 2 days. Yeah. And it was for her, we could just see, like, she was so much more relaxed because all this weight of, prepping the listing, the stress of prepping the listing, clearing it out, all that stuff was completely taken away. It was gone. Yeah. We were able to sell it in such a short time. Yeah. She was happy as a camper. We got her into a lease listing. Yes. After the fact.
Yeah, there's a lesson here, and the lesson is that, and we're going to end with this because we're going over our time. This is great, by the way. The lesson that we learn here is that one size doesn't fit all in real estate, right? One size doesn't fit all, and you really have to understand your prospect and your lead's pain point. For her, it was 30 years worth of stuff that she couldn't get rid of, and our positioning there was, hey, we'll take care of that for you, right? How can we make your life easier? And it was by positioning it for her that way.
Absolutely. We'll kind of do the last two because we're the podcast's running over. We'll kind of do the last two together. And go ahead, ask that question.
The next one's real estate is a part-time job.
And the highest offer always wins.
The highest offer always wins.
We'll kind of go back and forth with this. I think some of it is interconnected. To bust them in real estate a part-time job, I could not imagine doing this part-time. Yeah. There is so much that goes on within our day, within the team. I feel even now as a full-time agent that's been now doing this we're going on to our 10th year, or I'm going on my 10th year, is had I started this job as a part-timer, I would not be able to provide the level of expertise that I have, the level of service that we give, and everything in between. This is definitely not, so much goes into, educating clients, taking care of their needs, giving them the right advice, coming up with a strategy, how to position a home. I could not imagine doing this for, 10, 15 hours a week. Yeah. I think a lot of my time is now actually spent on strategizing on how we're going to go about selling homes and how do we interconnect. Like, we do a lot in Etobicoke. Yeah. And how do we interconnect our listings so all of our listings are getting the same amount of attention? Yeah. So I could not imagine doing this as a part-time job.
Doing part-time is very tough. Imagine you have a client that wants to see a property on a weekend when you're working, on a weekday during the day and you're working and you're not able to provide that service. Now you're doing not just the client's disservice, you're doing the entire industry disservice. So part-time, you can do part-time and you can still do deals, but if this is something you're truly trying to break into and trying to really go big with it, part-time is not going to work.
Yeah. It's not the right industry to do this part-time. Yes, can you, and maybe this is it, like going back, like, if you want to do it part-time, if you want to start it part-time, again, I'm not discouraging anyone from pursuing real estate, but if you want to truly start part-time, like start again at the leases, right? Yeah. Like do the leases, get your reps in when people start to buy. However, as an entrepreneur, you're going to have to make a transition at some point where you're going from becoming a part-time agent to a full-time agent. So, just be aware, just be mindful of the fact that you're really doing a disservice to your client by doing this part-time. Yeah. And the last one is highest offer always wins.
Yeah, so that's definitely a huge myth. The highest offer does not win. There's so much more that goes into putting in an offer and trying to get the offer done without necessarily giving the highest price. And the best example of that is I remember one time I was putting in an offer where we're competing with 3 other offers. It was an offer night. The property was listed low, below market value. And then my client asked me, and she goes, should we be the highest offer? And I said, look, let me find out a little bit more detail. So I called the listing agent and I asked the listing agent, again, you want to ask questions and do an analysis and be listening. And I remember in this particular case, the most important, price is obviously always important, but the most important thing for them was to make sure that they were able to close the property as far out as possible, because the family had 2 small kids and they needed to make sure that they made arrangements, and there was a family flying out from overseas and they needed the place for a month before they transition. So knowing that key piece of information, it really helped me negotiate the deal where you don't necessarily have to put in the highest offer, but you can put in the something that's actually important to the seller. But another thing that helped in that case was, how can we get more of an edge, was I suggested to my clients, look, let's go in with a stronger deposit, because if we go in with a stronger deposit, we can show a better commitment. And also, prior to that, doing due diligence, such as, going over the home inspection so that we have already looked at any deficiencies there are and accounted for it, and removing that condition. So you can make your offer stronger without necessarily putting the highest price.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I'll kind of also I'll tell one of my stories on how I was able to navigate a multiple offer situation and not being the highest offer, we were still able to win.
Yeah.
So I remember, this is going back again a few years. I was competing in Brampton, right? And I was on the buying end. So my clients were buying the first investment property. We had looked at this beautiful semi-detached, and we had gone over like how we were gonna set up, and it was gonna cash flow positive, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, going back to an offer night, 15 offers, right? The agent was, and I knew going in that it was a hot market. I knew going in that we were gonna be competing. So how did I prepare my client? We had a pre-inspection done, right? We paid for the pre-inspection report. Yeah. And before the offer night, we had an inspection done. I called the agent just to let her know that, hey, I'm going to be going in to do an inspection.
Right.
So again, in the agent's mindset, she's like, man, this agent is very proactive.
A good agent, yeah.
It's a good agent, going in, doing the inspection, all that kind of stuff. And then on offer night itself, again, we went in with a very strong deposit. Yeah. I was able to tell a story on my clients. I had asked my clients to print out their pre-approval from the bank. Yeah. So now that I go in with no conditions, again, it was one of those markets where people are putting in no conditions. Again, in today's market, I don't necessarily recommend it, because there's no reason for it. But back then, it was definitely. I mean, had I put conditions, there was no way I would have won. But anyway, we knew exactly what we're getting into because we had the home inspection done. Yeah. It was well below our price point in terms of the pre-approval. I knew the property would appraise because, neighborhood properties had sold for around the same price. And so I was the winning offer. We were $25,000 short than the highest offer. Yeah. I went in there and, she invited, in the end, she called me, she gave me an opportunity and said, Saurabh, would you guys improve a little bit more and da-da-da. So I got buying signals from her, as in she really wanted to work with us. My clients said, let's just increase another 10,000. What is it? And I said, guys, let's stick to our guns. I know that this agent would want to really work with us. And sure enough, we stuck to our guns. We stuck to our price that we went in with, and we won the offer. Yeah. And going into the house and talking to the agent right away said, hey, you should thank your agent, because had it not been for him, you would have not won this house in front of my clients. Such a huge victory for me. Right. And then she reiterated these points, you guys were very prepared. Your agent knew what he was doing. And you guys had the inspection done. You guys had no conditions. You guys showed me the pre-approval letter. And going back to your point earlier, they knew that we would close. Yeah. That was the reason that they we won that property.
And again, just goes back to showing, right, to one of the things that we covered earlier, all agents are the same. And that's exactly why what differentiates a great agent from just any other agent that's out there is just that your ability to be proactive, your ability to have connections, have a good relationship with the listing agent. These are the things that really make you stand out, not necessarily make you want to pay the most, but give you the leverage that you need to actually secure a deal, even if it's under the other offers.
Yeah. So again, guys, those was our last questions. We are again Bros who close.
So in our next episode, we're gonna talk about.
We gotta get this set up properly. I'm having a harder time.
I know.
Fist
we gotta
bumping.
Just do it from the bottom here.
Bottom. All right.
Yeah. There you go. We're gonna talk about networking in the next one, which is gonna be awesome. So
my favorite topic, by the way.
Yeah. Tune in next week and. Follow us on Instagram, Bros Who Close, TikTok, Bros Who Close, and of course YouTube, Bros Who Close. Make sure you subscribe.
Bye, guys.
See ya.